Hello and welcome to episode 149 of The Pitcher or the Hitter, the podcast by the M-SABR Dynasty League for the M-SABR Dynasty League. I am Cam,
I'm Sahil.
and it is, as of the time of recording, 9:41 p.m., March 13th, and Ronald Acuna has not yet been traded. Now that could change by the time this episode comes out. There were a few times we thought it was imminent, but as of yet, this trade has not yet happened.
Yeah, I mean, Ruthvik's floated out trading Acuna a couple times throughout the offseason and before, and this is the first time he seems really serious about it. Um, he's gotten some interesting offers. I don't really know what he's gonna do. I think you're right. Every time it looks like he's gonna close something, something else pops up. I wouldn't be surprised if, and this could be very wrong by the time you post the episode, but like if I had to put my money on whether or not he's moving before the season starts, I don't know. I'd lean no. I'd lean like something happening that just messes it up, but I don't know, man. It'll be interesting to see.
Yeah. But yeah, this is a lot of talk about deals that have not happened. There was a deal that did actually happen um,
Oh
during
God,
this
I have a
past
lot to say
week.
about this one too.
Yeah, this was a deal between EBO and Jake. EBO sent Kevin Alcantara and a second rounder to Jake for Carlos Rodon. Bit of a weird deal, I would say. That feels like a lot to give up for Carlos Rodon. I know that was your reaction too.
I am just not a Rodon guy, and I mean, it's not me being a hater. It's like I've been offered Rodon multiple times, like over the last like year and a half, 2 years, and I've just turned it down every time. I'm just not convinced. The health angle really concerns me. He dealt with injuries last year. He dealt with injuries throughout his time with the White Sox. The injury clearly affected his performance last year. And then my issue with EVO making this trade is like, hey, if Rodon had come out and the velocity had been up in spring training and things looked good, I'd be like, all right, like, you know, this is a decent gamble, right? The upside we've seen is someone who's contending for a Cy Young award. Like, I don't, fine. Like, go and make this move, right? And kind of see if you can catch lightning in a bottle. The issue is that his spring training's been a disaster. Now, today, a couple of days after the trade, he put together a relatively decent start. The velocity was up, maybe some signs of improvement. But at the time, he just looked like an unmitigated disaster. And I don't think one decent performance kind of wipes out all of the concerns that I have about him. He's just not somebody I want anything to do with. I get why somebody would want to gamble on him, but there's way too much risk for the upside here for me, and I want no part of it. And Kevin Alcantara is a pretty decent outfield prospect. Like the one thing you could say about EBO is they do have a lot of depth, so maybe Alcantara is more expendable for their team than it is for other teams. But man, I hate Carlos Rodon. I don't get it. I didn't get the contract when the Yankees signed him to it. Uh, I no.
Yeah, I agree. Rodon's had just a weird up and down career. Um, Kind of came out at rookie year, or second year. Really first couple of years, solid. He was 22, 23, looking like a potential future guy, and then just kind of had 4 years which were mostly a waste in a row. Mostly written off. Yeah, 2020 only pitched 7 innings. Then 2021 he comes back and is really great. Kind of single-handedly carries Connor's team to the playoffs. 2022 he was really great, maybe even better. He had a 2.25 FIP. And then last year, after signing with the Yankees, was another lost season. So we'll see. I know that kind of happens to guys when they sign with the Yankees, i.e. Sonny Gray, and they can still rebound. So we'll see what it's it's interesting. But yeah, I agree. There is some upside here, but also Kevin Alcantara is a top 75 prospect. I like him a lot. That does feel like a lot to give up.
Yeah, I think if it was a player with a little better injury track record, like a better track record of health, but he was just coming off the down year where he dealt with like a year of injuries, but like before that, he had been able to stay relatively healthy and on the field with like solid performance. I think I'd be more willing to just be like, yeah, he had a down year, he'll be fine. When you're looking in conjunction with just like the seasons that he's had before 2024, I just have a hard time kind of putting it together and seeing those pieces together. But yeah. I don't even, unlike you, I don't even think the value is terribly off. I just don't like Rodon. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I don't love Rodon either. The home run rate spiked this year, so maybe that's there's some regression coming there. Although maybe the home run that's just the Yankee Stadium thing as opposed to
Yeah,
really,
he's
yeah,
a
what
lefty.
happens when you
So
go from San Francisco to Yankee Stadium as opposed to a thing that's due for regression.
yeah, but he's a lefty, so you would think that like the short right field porch wouldn't be as big of an issue for him. Although that is a huge ballpark shift, and even like Chicago is like not the worst place to pitch either, like compared to New York.
Yeah, that is true. It's not, yeah, not the worst certainly. But yes, that'll be interesting. EBO's got another arm in their rotation now, um, to join Yamamoto and Imanaga uh,
Yuri
and
Perez.
JP Sears, uh, etc. It's not a bad rotation. I gotta say, Perez and Bieber looked okay in the spring, and Joe Ryan I've always liked. So it's not a bad rotation, but yeah, Rodon will have to kind of wait and see on.
It is a very high upside, high risk rotation. Like if Yamamoto and Perez both pan out the way we think they can, and Rodon bounces back, and like Joe Ryan bounces back from kind of the shitty like end of the season he had when he was dealing with injury. Like this is a damn good rotation, but I mean, there's an insane amount of risk too. Like Perez is like a 20-year-old pitcher. Yamamoto first season in over like stateside. Maybe Joe Ryan's concerns are not just because of the injury, right? Like, I mean, this could get messy quickly too. I
Yeah,
like that.
they're gonna be a little bit higher in these power rankings than they were last time we did them. But are we ready to get into them, the power rankings?
Yeah, let's get into these power rankings. So Cam and I put together combined power rankings. I think he and I might have slightly different opinions on where we put some of these teams, but we did kind of go on a consensus here. We're going to talk about them 12 to 1, kind of preview them a bit. Um, Cam, you have the list up. I cannot get Google Docs to load for some reason. My computer's deciding not to be my friend, or maybe it's just Google. Fuck Google. Our technology overlords probably heard me say that. That's not good. Uh, I got a
Watch
granola
out.
bar the other day. Hadn't had this type of granola bar in like 3 months. Picked it off at the snack bin in my office. I kept getting ads for it the next day after like never having an ad for it. Like they're watching us, Cam.
They're watching your granola bar intake.
Yeah, it's comfortable.
Yeah,
I didn't even have my
gotta be
phone
careful.
out. It was in my pocket. Like, how'd you see the granola bar from my pocket? But anyways, power rankings. Why don't you go ahead? I'll see if I can get sheets to work in the interim. But who's our number 12 ranked team?
Yeah, so we have at number 12, we have Daniel and Matt. We have had them number 12 each of the last several power rankings. You almost put a different team at 12. I think it's tough to, until proven otherwise. They've got some interesting pieces. Nolan Jones is a good get um, for them.
Oh,
Bryson,
I'm not a Nolan Jones guy.
really, you're not a Nolan Jones guy.
I am so out on Nolan Jones.
Really, he had a
Yes.
great season.
Yeah, he ran a super high BABIP. The plate skills aren't amazing. I think he is a heavy candidate for regression. I want nothing to do with Nolan Jones right now. I think he's getting ridiculously overhyped.
Interesting. 401 BABIP. That is a lot. It is a large ballpark, and he did run very high BABIPs
But
this
not
whole time
only
in the
that, if
minors.
you look at the
But
BABIP split, his road BABIP is like 430. That's unsustainable, especially. You can run a high BABIP in cores, but you're not going to run a high BABIP on the road.
you know, well, yeah, that is interesting. So you're immediately crapping on their best player. I love it. Um, but yeah, I guess Nolan Jones is probably their best player. I mean, Christian Encarnacion Strand, I like him. Logan O'Hoppe is interesting. Henry Davis is probably going to get some run in the majors this year. We'll see how that turns out. James Outman, I know you like. That's kind of the lineup. The rotation, I mean, it's it's tough. Their best starting pitcher is Dane Dunning, maybe. Um, maybe Clark Schmidt if you like Clark Schmidt or Josiah Gray. But
Luis Severino, Frankie Montas maybe
I
have a
don't
little
like Luis
bit of
Severino.
upside.
But yeah, we'll see how healthy Montas is.
He had
Because
a,
he's gotten rave reviews in the spring, but he may have hurt something in his start today. So we'll see about that.
yeah, he was
It's yeah.
supposed to pitch 5 innings, but only got through like one out in the second. I don't know if he just hit a pitch count or not, because apparently he struggled enough first inning. They took him out before the end of the inning and then put him back in. But just for context,
Yeah, so that's the thing to monitor. Yeah, this rotation especially needs a little bit of needs a lot of work in there. Um, they're working on it, I guess. But in the minors, do they have anyone
well,
coming up
so
soon?
I will say there's a couple names you didn't mention, including a couple who are like about to come up or have got like a little sprinkle of playing time at the end of last year. So you did mention Josh Lowe, uh, who's coming off a really good year. He kind of silenced me a little bit. I was kind of a critic. Uh, did you mention Bryson Stott? I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Okay. Jordan Lawler and Heston Kjerstad. I don't know if either of them are going to make the opening day roster, but those are both top prospects that I'm really excited about. Um, I know Drew Gilbert's pretty solid prospect. Tick Hent, they're really excited about Chase Hampton. Roman Anthony's really kind of jumped up rankings. Graham Pauley might make the Padres opening day roster, which is crazy to me. We have him listed in high A here. Drew Thorpe, also a really solid prospect. So like,
yep, part of the Dylan Cease return.
yeah, we still have him listed as a Yankee here. So that's
Yeah,
not,
we maybe haven't been updating that the most.
yeah, but it's not an elite farm by any stretch of the imagination, but there are a few pieces here where I'm like, yeah, like this could help. I like a bit of their young hitting. Their pitching's a disaster, and the two guys we didn't mention who I think are their best two starters from a talent perspective, Dustin May and Luis Garcia, are sitting on the IL, and are going to miss significant chunks of the season. So Dustin May's already on the 60 day, and Luis Garcia, I think it was TJ he had last year, and he's going
I
to miss.
believe so. Yeah, he'll be out for a while.
Yeah, so I mean. I think Daniel and Matt have made some smarter moves recently. And do I like a lot of their young players? Yes. Are they in the early stages of a rebuild still? Yes. But
Yeah, this team really, yeah, feels like they're kind of running in circles still, trying to find a couple big pieces to hit on.
I think there is more direction to this team than there was a year ago. I will say that.
And that's true. There's also perhaps less in the rotation than there was a year ago.
Yeah. I don't know how they solve that problem.
I don't know. I'm not sure either, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah, I don't think anybody is. But ready to talk about number 11, or is there anything else you want to say about this team?
No, they just got their work cut out for them. But yeah, number 11, And this is a drop. This team we had mid-season last year at number 6, but and you fought for this to put Connor down at 11.
Yeah, and in hindsight, I don't really know why I fought for it. Kind of looking at the rosters, this is maybe the most interesting case study here, right? Connor, we dealt him a very bad hand, uh, to put it lightly, and it took him a couple years to really build himself up. He along the way in building himself up had some of the craziest trade. I mean, he's traded away Trey Turner, he's traded away Juan Soto, he's traded away Fernando Tatis. Like, I think some of these guys he maybe even reacquired and then traded back away, right? Like, there's the history of Connor trades at the beginning of this league is absolutely wild, but he was able to build himself all the way up to that finals appearance in year 4. Upset me in the semis that year, right? I mean, just a great playoff run. And then he's kind of fallen off since then. I mean, he made the playoffs in year 5, but it wasn't a particularly strong team he put together that year. And he kind of bottomed out last year. And I know life's just gotten him busy. So like I'm not faulting him, but uh some of the decisions that he's made just have not quite panned out. And I think he's starting to realize that, and he has sold a bit, and has made some pretty solid trades in selling. I think both the Hader and Semien trades he made with me got him like quite a few really solid pieces to build around. I really liked him trading away Justin Verlander for Dylan Cease last year, even though I'm not the biggest Dylan Cease guy. He got a nice young catcher in Bo Naylor for me for Lucas Giolito's busted arm. Still pissed about that. Uh, but like, man, he also has his work cut out for him. The difference to me between their team and Daniel and Matt's team, though, is there's more talent on here in which to trade and kind of work with. So while I think Connor's kind of bottoming out here, like I think his path to getting back to relevancy is going to be a lot easier than Daniel and Matt's.
I think that's fair. Yeah, he's got some pieces. He really had some bad luck with some of his prospects all not panning out. Forrest Whitley, I mean, his farm system went from first to like 11th or 12th over the course of a year. And it looks a little bit better now. Although I didn't love his draft, but I like Robbie Snelling and Chase Petty and uh, Kyle Manzardo. Colson Montgomery is a good get.
Cole
Uh,
Young,
yeah, Cole Young. So there's
I,
some guys here. It's better than it's been. But yeah, and the major league roster, I mean, there's still not really star power outside of Luis Robert, and Adam Duvall, of course.
I will say
Uh,
Robert is like significantly better than any player that Daniel and Matt have to build around. And it's nice to kind of have that anchor to build around. And
that is true, and especially considering how young he is.
exactly, yeah. Um, and there's
Yeah, in the
other
road, yeah, the rotation, he's got Cease, who, yeah, just got traded
San Diego.
to San Diego. I still maybe believe in Tristan McKenzie. Um, like he didn't pitch much last year, but maybe he's healthy this year. Maybe Logan Allen is good. Maybe Andrew Abbott is good. Um, so he's got more upside guys who are closer to the majors. His Abbott and Allen um guys. I mean, Daniel and Matt don't have anyone like that. That he could kind of that Connor can kind of dream on here. Look, it's just yeah, this is not kind of the finals team from a couple years ago.
Right. I will say that there is some interesting trade chips here too that can help accelerate the rebuild still. I mean, he traded away a couple of the big ones last year in Semien and Hader and Verlander, but like Sal Perez, Justin Turner, like Eugenio Suarez, Carlos Correa, Reese Hoskins, Jorge Soler, like Byron Buxton, Jeffrey Springs and Robbie Ray once they get healthy, Merrill Kelly, John Means, like Those are guys, I'm not saying all of them are going to get you like elite returns or anything, but like some of them are going to get you like usable prospects that can help accelerate a rebuild here. So I think if Connor's smart about it, he could turn some of these pieces into nice assets and rebuild that farm. So they're not barren.
That's true. I agree. Um, yeah, and I could see maybe not with the way like any catcher outside the top five gets valued in our league. Maybe Salvador Perez isn't the guy, but I could definitely see a Justin Turner or a Correa or a Reese Hoskins getting some sort of return for him.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some of these guys too are just coming off like down years or injuries. Like I'm thinking like Gavin Lux missing all of last year. Correa kind of had an injury-filled year. Hoskins missed all of last year. If those guys bounce back to the level of their talents, like Connor could get a haul. Um, and it only really takes one or two of those guys hitting for him to like be able to trade them for big hauls. And all of a sudden we're like, hey, Connor's got a top six farm system.
Hmm. Yeah, no, definitely. He could make this a decent farm system without a ton of difficulty.
Yeah, agreed. Anything else you'd like to say about this team, or you ready to move to number 10?
Let's move to number 10. We decided to put Anthony down at number 10. Um, yeah, Team Resnick. Still some interesting guys. He's still got Mike Trout. I don't dislike his lineup. Gleyber Torres, Spencer Steer. He's got some big names towards the top, Willie Adames, but not a ton of depth on the offensive side. And pitching again, a couple guys at the top, like Peralta, Javier, Bryce Miller, but yeah, again, a little bit lacking in depth. Oh, Bailey Ober, of course, too. A little bit lacking in some of that depth. He's got some interesting guys, just like Connor. He's got some guys like Reese Olson and Brandon Pfaadt who are interesting. But yeah, not yeah. He would definitely need a couple more starters. His rotation's in worse shape than last year when we got a little bit premature declaring him one of the best young rotations.
Yeah, I think the difference between his team and Connor's team is I see a lot more pieces on Anthony's roster that I think he could build around. Whereas like um Connor kind of just has like Luis Robert and maybe a couple of smaller pieces. Like I think like Glaber and Spencer Steer and O'Neill Cruz, Sean Murphy, Willie Adames, Jazz Chisholm, you didn't even mention, Mike Trout. Like I think these can be legitimate building blocks. And I do like some of his secondary pieces, kind of looking at like Orion Mountcastle and Alec Thomas. This guy Andy Rodriguez is gonna miss a year, but I still think that's a pretty decent bat. Um, and then the pitching side's a little trickier for me. Like, yeah, I like the Bryce Miller acquisition, Freddie Peralta. That's a good 1-2 punch, although it comes with some risk. Bailey Ober as well. I'm not sure Reese Olson has a rotation spot to start the year, but I'm at least curious to see how he does. I do think Brandon Pfaadt has some upside he's going to show this year. I think the rotation lacks depth. I do think you're right about that. Um, I One thing I will say is I think this kind of goes to the strength of the league here that like a team like this in the first few years of the league would be on the periphery of the playoff hunt for most of the season, if not sneaking in as a sixth seed. Now, this is the type of team that we're looking at as a 10th, best team. So I know Anthony's kind of had this up down each year, like make the playoffs, miss the playoffs, make the playoffs, miss the playoffs. But I just think with how good some of the talent has gotten at the top, I think he's going to be hard pressed to make it with this team.
Yeah, I agree. I could see him having some upsets, but I agree. I don't think this is a playoff team this year. The farm is interesting. Rafaela, he's got a few starting pitchers right on the door of the majors, such as yeah, Jordan Wicks has pitched in the majors. Cade Cavalli, Gavin Stone, Paul Skeens could be in the majors this year. Um,
Cade
and
Horton.
then yeah, Cade Horton too. I do like this farm. Um, and that's even just the pitchers. There's a lot of pitching depth in the farm, and that's seems like a thing that we've seen Anthony do is just kind of try and um, get a great quantity of close to the majors pitching prospects, and this year's no exception. But yeah, he's also got guys like Drew Jones, Elijah Green, Jace Young in the minors. So this is a solid farm, and I could see him maybe next year being on the periphery of the playoffs more so than this year.
Yeah, I will say the Drew Jones and Elijah Green early returns aren't looking amazing. And I think both have kind of fallen off the prospect map a little bit. I still think they both have a lot of potential, and one down year is not going to get me completely out on both of them. But like, you know, when you have two of the top four picks in a draft and both of them don't look good in the first year, it's a really tough look. And I hope they do bounce back. But I think that's like a big example, right? Of like, hey, if you want to kind of take this next step and get back into playoff relevancy, like you have to hit on those picks when you have those opportunities. Those opportunities don't come that often. Um, and you could argue of those like four players who are up there, like the consensus top four, like he got the worst two of them. So despite the fact he picked two and four, so we'll see. But it's going to be really interesting. We'll see how they develop.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, let's move on. Then number nine is Alex and Zach, and I know you always have plenty to say about this team, so I'll let you start.
Yes, we ranked Alex and Zach nine. You wanted to rank them lower. I wanted to rank them higher. This is our compromise ranking. Um, every year, there's always a couple teams that I just get high on.
There's always one team, and it's always this team.
Yes, yes. There's just so much to like. Um, let's look at this young hitting here. Like he's had the first overall pick the last 2 years. And by all accounts, he's knocked it out of the park. Like Jackson Holiday is about to be a 20-year-old making the opening day roster for the Orioles. Wyatt Langford looks awesome. He's got Julio Rodriguez. He's got Jordan Walker, who's been a top five dynasty prospect. Uh, like I still think there's another step for Volpe here. Like the power speed was there. I think he can get on base at a better clip this year. I'm a huge Josh Naylor guy. Ha-Seong Kim and Zach Geloff, I think, could be solid contributors. Um, I think Brett Beatty can maybe do something. Like I really like Lars Nootbaar. Francisco Alvarez is a really good young dynasty catcher. And then there is a lot of like solid young hitting prospects that are also in the minors for him waiting to come up, like Samuel Basallo sitting there and Tyler Locklear. I'm a big Enrique Bradfield guy, right? Like I see the upside here for the offense. And I think a lot of these pieces are going to hit. I'm high on a lot of them. And then if you look at the pitching side, I mean, I think Logan Gilbert and Bryce Miller is a fantastic 1-2 punch. I really like Brian Wu. Gavin Williams also very solid. I'm a big Ryan Pepio guy. I don't know if you're as high on him, but I certainly am.
Mm.
Emmanuel Cosse is a top reliever. I get Emmett Sheehan and Shane Baz are going to miss the start of the season, but I think both of them have a lot of talent. He doesn't have as much depth kind of on the pitcher side here in the minors, but um, I think he can go out and kind of acquire some pitchers to kind of fill in here. I see the vision. I think this team is improving. I don't think they're a playoff team this year. I'm going to keep my expectations in check, but I love a lot of the pieces they have gone out and acquired. We talked about the Reagans trade last week, right? I think they kind of added a little more balance into their offense here, and there's a lot of risk. Don't get me wrong, but I really like what the potential reward could be, and I would have put them as high as 8. So that's where I think they should have been ranked.
Well, we'll see. Yeah, we've got them ninth. Yeah, I think there's a lot of risk here. I think a lot of this depends on, well, what do we see from Jordan Walker this year? How much Wyatt Langford do we see this year?
I think he makes the opening day roster, but
Interesting. That could be interesting. We'll see. But there's also a lot of, playing the waiver wire here, like Matt Wallner, Jonathan Aranda. Hunter Goodman could all be cut. And if he finds good guys to kind of cycle through here, and be good major leaguers this year, this he could make some noise because there's some interesting guys.
Yeah. I think just some interesting guys is underselling it. I don't know. I just he has happened to acquire a bunch of players that I really like, so I don't know. Oh, breaking news. Devin Williams expected to miss 3 months with stress fractures in his back.
Ooh,
That's a huge loss for Jake.
yeah.
Yeah.
Very, very interesting. Very um tough for the fourth or fifth place Brewers this year.
Oh man, that's they should have just dumped him and Adamas before spring training. If you're gonna trade Burns, I don't know why you're holding on to those two. But oof. There's a big impact on that bullpen for Jake too. I mean, we'll get to that in a second, but when we talk about his team. But anything else you'd like to say about Alex and Zach? Because I could talk about all these players for like 10 hours, but I'm not going to.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Um, Moving on now, we put Yuki at 8. Um,
Oh,
the
God.
pitching,
Yeah, I forgot about this one.
the pitching is bad, but I gotta say this is a top 5 lineup in the league. I mean, running down this list, Isaac Paredes, um, Austin Riley, Dansby Swanson, Bregman Arise, Corbin Carroll. This is the best lineup we've seen so far. I haven't even mentioned Bryce Harper or Moreno or Randy. He's in true Yuki fashion got 3 catchers on his roster currently. Um, so there's something that could be done about that. But I mean, this is a really solid lineup, pretty much top to bottom. Um, Not a lot of gaps here. And then looking at the pitchers, you know, Camilo Doval is good. Um, and Zach Eflin is all right. Maybe Kyle Harrison's good. Um,
I I like Hunter
he's got
Brown
an
a
all right
lot.
bullpen. Um, Hunter Brown
Yeah.
is yeah, you said. So I like his bullpen. I think he's definitely we've been talking about his rotation not being great for a while, but um I think it's hard for me to put him lower than eighth with the lineup he has.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I think you're right. I think he's the eighth best team. Yeah, I looking at this roster now, just with the offense and reminding myself how good it is. I mean, you didn't even mention Chas McCormick, Dalton Varsho, Brandon Lau, Yainer Diaz, Mason Wynn. Like this is a top tier lineup. Um, I can't get over how bad this pitching staff is. Um, Imagine if Yuki hadn't traded Ahmed Rosario to me last year for Zach Eflin. Like this rotation would be just absolutely god awful. Uh Pete Fairbanks too, you mentioned like if he could even just get like two more good starting pitchers, right? Paired him with Eflin, paired him with Hunter Brown. We didn't even mention the Taj Bradley injury. That sucks as an aside. But like, and then if like Drew Rasmussen gets healthy or Max Meyer comes up during the season and looks really good, um, all of a sudden he's kind of got the makings of a rotation. As it stands right now, I don't know where that pitching is coming from. So I think you're right. I think just purely this is the first, like, let's put it this way. If you're like separating out kind of like the hitting and the pitching as like different entities, this is the first team that we've talked about that is elite in one of those categories.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think this is an elite lineup. Congratulations, Yuki. Yeah, gotta find some pitching. Um, if and it's really up to Yuki to decide whether he trades some lineup pieces and tries to rebuild a little bit, or if he tries to get some pitching and go all in.
Yeah, I don't know what he's gonna do. It's Yuki. He's so unpredictable. As an aside, was one of your questions in your what's it called, preseason predictions, which by the way we should plug in here, um was about how many catchers Yuki's gonna have?
No, that's a good one though. That can be part of if you have like predictions for us before the season that you want to get out now, we can do that, or we can do that at the end of this episode. But yeah, let's plug the preseason prediction game. Winner gets a DHgate jersey, inspired by Andrew's fantastic hockey version of this. Um, it's a fun time. A lot of good questions. We included who will win the pick'em. We also included who will win that game as one of the questions, which is one I enjoy. Um, and yeah, vote, make your picks, and maybe win a prize.
Absolutely. No, I am certainly excited to play.
Yeah. You have not voted yet.
Yeah, and I also did call it your sloppy seconds. Um, yeah, I will be voting though. I'm very excited. Uh, I will. I was too busy putting the podcast together, so or honestly, I was too busy lying in bed trying to motivate myself to make dinner so we could record. But
Yeah,
uh,
putting the podcast together. What were you putting together?
uh, yeah. As soon as I said that, I was like, "Well, you do all the editing. You just
We were not
You're
putting
the one who
anything
wants to
together
go
yet.
back and listen to my voice. I wonder how many hours of my voice you like listen to over the course of a year, just like between us recording and then editing. Like you're probably sick of my voice by now.
Yeah, I'd rather not think about that.
I'm not even. You know what? I'm honored. You should be honored.
Something.
That's something. Um. All right. Are you ready to move on to the next team?
Let's do it. Number 7 is where we decide to
Nope.
put
Nope.
EBO. First team out of the playoffs is what we're predicting. And this is an interesting team. You've talked a lot about EBO earlier in this episode, how you don't like what's going on with them. But there's definitely some names there. Top part of the lineup, and we'll see if they trade any of these guys away by the time this episode comes out. But I mean, I like Gunner and McLean uh and Goldschmidt. Didn't have the best year, but he's solid. Torque broke out a little bit. He maybe is never going to be a superstar. Zane has him listed as unlikely to trade, which I find fun. I guess yeah, had a solid year. Kerry Carpenter, I know Zane likes a lot. So there's some names there, and we've discussed the rotation, so we don't really need to dive deep into Zane right now since we've kind of given a lot of discussion about this team already. But I feel comfortable with them at seventh, and I think there's a chance they can break out into the playoffs.
Yeah, I think this is like my comp to them wouldn't be if we're going down, wouldn't be Yuki's team. My comp to them would be more like Alex and Zach's team, but like with a crap ton more depth, and more interesting pieces. I do think they're on the up and up. They've accumulated a lot of young talent. I think it's about properly consolidating that young talent, but also identifying what young talent they currently have is going to be part of their, roster full time. Despite all of the bad stuff I was saying about some of the stuff they do need to do, like I do think Zane has done a remarkable job of turning this team around. Um, he's put together elite teams before that have made it to the finals. He's was in the finals 2 of the first 3 years in the league, kind of retooled, and now he's, kind of moving back towards that direction. So, I mean, I don't have a lot more to add. I mean, there's a bunch of young players. It would take us forever to name all of them, so I'm not going to do that. But like, um, I think the last thing I'll say is I think the really important thing for this team is carefully plotting out the next steps because if they do it correctly, this team is going to be a force to be reckoned with for like, a half decade to 8 years. This isn't going to be like a short Connor like rise that where the bottom falls out. I think this is a team that has real staying power, but they can't fuck this up. Like I
Yeah, yeah,
the
no, Zane's gonna have to be savvy.
Yeah, I envy the talent that they have to work with here to shape their roster however they want to do it, but they just cannot do it in a way that they fuck up. And they have made trades like that in the past. I mean, I'm thinking about the trade that landed them Torkelson in the first place, right? Like, don't be reckless. Take risks, be bold, but don't be reckless. That's the only thing I think that can really sink this team at this point. And recklessness has sinked them before, so it's the only reason I'm saying that.
Yeah, no, I agree. But we've talked a lot about this team. We can move on to number six, and that's where we decided to put another team we spend a lot of time talking about. That's Ruthvik.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think now if he trades Acuna, I don't think this is really going to change my ranking for him. I will let's get out in front of that. I think you and I are both kind of in agreement here. If we were going to name one of the six playoff teams from last year as most likely to not make the playoffs next year, I think it would be Ruthvik. Um, I do think the offense is better than it's been in previous years. I mean, we've talked about how he has all the pitching, he needs the bats, right? Um, he got Christian Walker. I thought that was a really savvy move he made with Eric. Like Andres Jimenez and Nico Horner make for a nice kind of second base shortstop combo. Rafael Devers is really good at third base. Think of Brian Hayes has some upside, right? Like Acuna, Santander, like Yoshida, solid outfield pieces. I really like the Tyler O'Neill acquisition. Kyber Ruiz and Mitch Garver is a solid catcher combo. I like Michael Garcia, right? Um, the pitching side, I think, is a little shakier than it's been in previous years. Like Musgrove's had some injury concerns. Jose Barrios bounced back a bit after a down season, but he was still pretty inconsistent from a start to start basis, right? Lots of questions about Trevor Rogers. Can Aaron Savali hold up for a full season and be good? Like Mackenzie Gore is a giant question mark. I never really understood that trade. His arguably his best starter, Kodai Senga, has dealing with a shoulder injury that really doesn't sound good. Um, Bullpen's elite, like Edwin Diaz, Andres Munoz, Yohan Duran, oh, and I didn't even mention Logan Webb for the rotation. That's his best starter, but I don't know. It's like a solid team. It's just not one that I think he is a tier below this next group of playoff teams that we're going to talk about.
Yeah, I think you pretty much summed it up. Yeah, it's just kind of all the same concerns. I agree Christian Walker was a savvy move, unless Eric knew something that we didn't by moving off of him. Look, he was a semis team last year. Back there for the first time after a couple year drought. There is upside on this team. It's just always going to come down to depth and all that.
I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of the season, EBO is the team we're talking about as the six, and Ruthvik is the team we're talking about as the seven.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like we talked about this team a bunch, so I don't really have much more to say. You want to move on to the next team?
Yeah, let's move on. At number five, we have Andrew. Um, Andrew also made the semis last year in his first playoff appearance in the league. And yeah, I think there's a lot to like on this team as well. That outfield with Schwarber and Reynolds, and Adolis Garcia is really solid.
Ian
TJ
Happ and
Friedl
TJ Friedel. Yeah.
could be interesting. We'll see. It's tough to view a Reds guy as a real fantasy piece.
Your whole Reds lineup is full of great young fantasy talents. What are you talking about?
I don't know. It's weird. Like TJ Friedl feels like I don't know. It's hard to imagine like people outside of Cincinnati knowing who he is. It feels like another Scott. I don't know.
I literally hooked on to him last year because one fantasy analyst wouldn't shut up about him and I got repaid by it. Now I don't know if it's sustainable. I think a lot of the metrics are concerning, but um he's good.
We'll
Like
see. He relies very heavily on bunting for hits, so the metrics aren't gonna like that. But
yeah, but even if you're taking those bunts out, I don't think it raises it to the point where I'm like, hey, he's smacking the ball. And like,
I think he
don't get me wrong, I love TJ Friedel. I think he's gonna have a good year, but I'm a little wary.
we'll see. But yeah, so that's TJ Friedel. I think it's a solid lineup all around. Um, and then yeah, looking at the pitching uh side of things, Grayson Rodriguez, I know you like. Justin Steele had that fantastic season. Tanner Bybee, which I'm pretty sure is the settled pronunciation of that, had a really great season last year. Pablo Lopez and that
How
great
many
bullpen with
different
Diaz Romano.
how many different ways do you think we pronounced his name on the podcast last year?
I feel like Bibby is what you went with, but I'm pretty sure Bybee is correct, right?
Yeah, I thought it was Bibby for like the first half of the season, and then realized it was Tanner Bybee.
Yeah. It still feels weird. He's got a very deep bullpen. He's got four guys projected for 17 or more holds this year, and three guys projected for 27 or more saves. Um, so there's a lot of depth in that bullpen and in the lineup. I think Andrew's got a really strong team.
Yeah, it's funny to me because we didn't even talk about any of his infielders, but like Bobby Wood Jr. is his best player. Like what a breakout he had last year. Josh Young had a really solid year for Texas. Ketel Marte had a big bounce back year. Nolan Gorman, I think, had a 30 home run season, 27, close enough. Jeimer Candelario had a solid year. He's now a Red. Um, like and then in the farm too, like I think there's some interesting pieces. I'm curious to see what the Brewers can do with DL Hall if they give him a real shot in the rotation. Like Jack Leiter, I know didn't have the best year last year, but there's still hope. Emerson Hancock, Jacob Berry, Leo DeVries, who we both talked about quite a bit in the draft episode. Zach Veen, like I keep using EBO as a comparison, but this feels like a better version of EBO who feels like a better version of Alex. Um, and I think the ceiling for Andrew is like he hasn't hit it yet. It was a really good team. We also didn't mention Pablo Lopez, by the way, who I think might be the best starter he has.
Yeah, that's true. I like Pablo Lopez too. Yeah, it's a good team all around. Ready to break the top four?
Yeah, let's break the top four. I will say this right now before Cam announces the top four. I disagree with how he is ranked 4 and 3, but let's go ahead.
You did not say that when we were setting
I
this
said
up.
I disagree, but I said I wasn't going to fight you on it.
All right. Well, number four, we have the team that lost to Andrew in the semis. It's Eric. Eric's got a very solid team. Um, kind of kind of not the deepest lineup, although he's got some solid guys, although he's also, as he does rostering um Chris Taylor and Nelson Velasquez in that lineup.
Jake
And
Cronin.
then yeah, Jake Cronenworth too. Um, Esteury Ruiz, it's that Eric guy who's gonna steal 60 bases and hit the ball out of the infield three times all season. Um, but yeah, there's a lot to like here with William Contreras and Jose Ramirez, of course, um, and Shohei, obviously. Um,
But he will not get pitching Shohei this year.
he will not get pitching Shohei, and without pitching Shohei, his rotation. Cole Reagans is a good get. And we've talked about how we were concerned about it, and I think he must have agreed considering he went out and got Cole Reagans. But there's a lot of question marks here outside of the top couple, Burns, Kirby, and
Glass
that's
now.
yeah, Glass now. I mean, he's looked great in spring training, but health is a concern there. Hunter Green, consistency is a real concern there. He's certainly got the fastball and got some of the stuff. Even Burns, you gotta wonder, yeah, if health is there and if he's last year wasn't his best season, if he's gonna bounce back.
Yeah, I don't
But
have
he's
health concerns with him as much as like skills concerns.
yeah, that's fair. Um, but yeah, I mean, with Verlander hurt and Scherzer hurt and DeGrom hurt, yeah, depth is an issue. on the pitching side as well. But overall, I think Eric's got a top four team. He's just kind of got his work cut out for him finding pitchers this year.
Yeah, I mean, Verlander, Scherzer, DeGrom, Ohtani is like an insane pitching IL. We're going to talk about some more insane pitching ILs, but um, yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, I'd have this team ranked at three. I do like Vinny P coming back. I think he's going to make a big impact. I've been really high on him. We didn't even talk about Ali. Trevor Story's hitting well in spring training. Maybe he bounces back. Royce Lewis, if he could stay healthy, I mean, he's got a shit ton of upside. Wander, obviously, we all know that situation, right? Jason Dominguez is going to miss the start of the year, but if he can come back healthy, like, I don't know if he's going to be like the elite guy that like some people were predicting earlier in his career, but I think he's still going to be a really good talent. Like, the pieces are there, and the one thing I do trust Eric to do is to backfill his roster kind of better than most teams. So I think he could kind of handle some of the attrition. Um, Speaking of attrition, we haven't even mentioned he lost Noel B. Marte to that suspension, but
Oof.
yeah, there's some interesting guys he has in the minors too. Spencer Jones, Luis Angel Acuna, Jonathan Clase, Jacob Marcy, uh, Dalton Rushing. I think Sebastian Walcott kind of took a step back, but I might be wrong about that one. Scott Austin Wells, Michael Bush, like a lot to love. It's another solid. It's a very Eric team. He builds his teams a certain way. He always does, and it looks the exact same. A couple of
Yeah,
different.
pretty
Um,
much. Yeah, just kind of cut and paste the Eric comments. We are talking about Reds guys though. Will Benson, I am all aboard the Will Benson train
me
for
too.
Eric.
Me too. Yeah.
I think he's fantastic. Um, but yeah, so that's Eric's team. Number three, we I put myself. I like my rotation a little better, and I like my lineup a little better than Eric's. Yeah, especially I feel like we talked about my recent trade, giving me some depth. I just like some of my complementary pieces
What what
here.
recent trade did you make?
The Bogarts trade.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess yeah. Running down my lineup, I've got as good of a top three outfield as anyone has with Soto, Judge, and Nimmo. And maybe that's kind of like the three-headed dragon meme. But I like Brandon Nimmo. Um, Yandy Diaz is gonna get on base. Uh, Juan Soto's gonna get on base. There's some guys on my bench who I'm kind of feeling out, but um I mean, we'll see what happens with Jonathan India. If he's a guy, we'll see. This is the year we're gonna kind of once and for all figure out if Jared Kelenick's a major league ready bat. This is
He's not.
he's gonna be in that Atlanta lineup driving in a lot of runs. We're gonna see Chris Bryant had a rough year last year, but he was really good in 2022 when he was healthy. So we're gonna see in worst case scenario, we either cut him or he's just taking a spot on my IL. Of
Got him.
course, Lindor is awesome. Um, so I like my lineup. Rotation wise, I know there's some concerns about Framber, but I'm happy with him at the top of the rotation. Um, Zach Wheeler is my number one. He's one of the top pitchers in baseball. I like the fact that Yu Darvish is starting opening day to maybe get him a three-start week, perhaps in.
No, because remember they're only doing the weekend, plus the two games in Korea, so it's a 6 game.
Oh, 16. That's annoying. So I still like the fact that in a week where he,
He will be
a
one of the
lot of
only two
pitchers are going to start
starts.
zero times.
Yeah.
Yeah, he might get two when a lot of pitchers get zero. Mitch Keller we'll see about. Jordan Montgomery still has to sign with a team, which worries me. It's going to be Boston probably, or Texas, but I'll get to put him on my NPI probably because he'll probably need a week or two in the minors to start the year. Um, And yeah, I like my bullpen. I could use some reinforcements in my bullpen. And I guess the last name I want to mention is Tanner Houck. I picked him. I took a flyer on him because I had an extra spot, and he has been unbelievable this spring training. And he's got a spot in that Boston rotation. And I'm not expecting him to become an ace, but I kind of um think he was a good pickup at least, and could be in my rotation for some amount of this season.
Yeah, that's fair. I think
Um,
I think you summed that all up nicely. The only thing I'm gonna say is you're gonna cut Jared Kalnick by like May 15th, and it's gonna be the most beautiful thing.
Put it on the sheet. May 15th.
Yeah, May 15th. Put it on the
All
sheet.
right, put it in the hot take sheet.
All right. We'll do that. If Sheets is loading now. Sheets is not loading. All right. I'll figure that out after the call, but um
Well, speaking of people who are us, we put you at two.
I fucking hate everything that's happening with my team right now. So I was gonna put myself in number one before the injuries happened. Because I was like, hey, like I know I lost to Jake in the finals. It was a really close matchup, but I beat him twice in the regular season. And the Roto, there was a very significant difference between our teams, right? Jake was kind of more bunched with you and Eric than he was closer to me. So I was going to be like, hey, I get that the final sucked, but like was the number one team last year throughout the season. Like, there's no reason not to rank me number one. And then the pitching injuries happen, right? Like Kyle Bradish gets hurt on the first day of spring training, right? And then Lucas Giolito and Braxton Garrett go down, like with both within a 5 minute span last week. And then the Garrett Cole news drops, and I'm like, you are fucking kidding me. This on top of Woodruff already on the IL and Bautista already on the IL. They're both out for the year. Julio Urias is an asshole, right? I picked up Liam Hendricks just because, like, I might as well just have a full complement of IL starters. So I chatted you. Let me see if I can pull this up here. I have an IL rotation right now that's like Garrett Cole, Brandon Woodruff, Julio Urias, Kyle Bradish, Lucas Giolito, and Braxton Garrett with a bullpen of Felix Bautista and Liam Hendricks. Like that's better than like some teams like healthy rotations. And they are all sitting on my IL. So it is fucking ridiculous. This has somehow not affected my hitting at all. My hitters are healthy. It's amazing. Although I did read something that Max Muncy lost 10 pounds because he was sick. Curious to see
Best
what
shape of
affects it.
his life.
Yeah, he was looking good before he got sick, but and he's somehow flying to Korea right now. He's on the way to the team, clearly healthy enough for that. But what I will say, I still adore my offense. It hasn't changed really, other than the fact that I picked up Jake Berger. Um, I, you know, from a pure talent combination of talent and depth, like I still think pound for pound, this is the best offense I've put together, and I'd argue it's the best offense in the league. The reason I can't put myself number one is because of these pitching injuries. I mean, it's still a solid top of the rotation, right? Like Zach Gallen had a great year last year. I think Aaron Nola is going to bounce back and be fine. Like Max Fried's a great pitcher. I think Nestor Cortez is going to be really solid this year and a bounce back. Like Stroman, Sanchez are fine as back in the rotation starters. And like the news on Bradish and Garrett today, like was better. They're both throwing bullpens. Like I think they should both be back. Garrett sometime in April. I think Bradish, I'm hoping he misses like April and May. He's back in June. The Garrett Cole news today was better than I thought, and you and I kind of discussed it off air. Like the fact he doesn't have a torn UCL is the only good thing I took out of today. Like I'm still waiting to hear more, but that gives me some hope. Um, so I think the combination of the good hitting, but kind of some of these pitching questions, it puts me at two, but I still feel good about some of the pieces I have. And I really do like some of the under the radar moves that I made this off season. I know one of them is not going to pan out this year. Unfortunately, it's Giolito, but I'm still really high on Christopher Sanchez, still really high on Jake Berger. And I'm inevitably going to make some trades. It's weird because it's been kind of a very quiet trade-off season for me. What's the last big trade I've made? Can you honestly remember? Because I can't.
Did you make any big ones this offseason?
No, no. I
Hmm?
mean, the last big trade I made was getting Josh Hader like at the deadline.
I mean, I get it. You reach a certain point, you don't feel like you need to make trades all the time.
Right. And so it's like I'm relying on the farm a little bit too. Hey, what Westbrook came up last year, he's making my roster. Colton Cowser is looking really good. So maybe I'm taking a little more of a cam approach here. But um God, just saying that sounds awful. But um yeah, these injuries make me less excited about a season than I have had in a while. But I mean, this I don't know. I'm cautiously optimistic that I can piece this together, but I do have my work cut out for me a little bit on the pitching side.
That you do, yeah, definitely with those pitching injuries, you kind of said it all better than I could. Um, so ready to talk about number one, our two-time defending champion, who has gone out and acquired Spencer Strider and is the front runner for Ronald Acuna.
Yeah, let's talk about this team. So I mean the top level players that Jake has are awesome, right? Like I'm not gonna dispute that at all. Let me pull up this team quickly. Right. I mean, Real Muto, Matt Olson, Manny Machado, Bo Bichette, Kyle Tucker, Jordan Alvarez, Michael Harris, Evan Carter, right? Corey Seager, I know he's hurt to start the year, but he's great. Then on the pitching side, right? Great top of the rotation trio with Strider, Castillo, Gosman. He's got Luzardo for now. The Devin Williams injury hurts in conjunction with Presley losing the closer's job, kind of like makes me think maybe he might be a little more punt saves this year. His only real established closer is Raisel Iglesias, although I expect Jason Adam to get some saves. Um, again, my concern with him is my only concern, and again, I feel like I'm nitpicking here, you know, uh, regardless of whether or not he makes the Acuna trade, still comes a little bit with depth. I mean, Gosman should start the season on time and healthy, but he is dealing with a little bit of a shoulder injury right now, right? So if he gets hurt, like we've talked about what that can mean for the rotation. He's remarkably healthy right now, but we know how quickly that can change, right? And then he does have a couple guys who are still free agents, and JD Martinez and Blake Snell, neither of whom there's any indication that they're going to sign anytime soon. I do think a couple of these guys are due for some regression. I don't think Matt Olson's going to have as great of a season as he did last year. Um, I don't think Evan Carter is going to be as good as he finished the season. I do think there's some room for like a JD Martinez to regress, a Corey Seager to regress a little bit just because he was at such an elite pace. So I think there are some question marks, but again, like I'm very much nitpicking here. This is an awesome team, then, and like I mean, he's in a good position to three-peat. And yeah,
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I like a lot of guys in on this team. Yeah, Edward Julian. Uh, I kind of thought he was on Eric's team. I think he was on Eric's team at one point. Um, but yeah, Edward Julian's gonna have a breakout season, I feel like. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, depth, you could maybe use one more bat in the back of this team. But yeah, those are things that you can find pretty easily during this season. Say he cuts Jack Sawinski in April and finds someone who does go on a heater. We're looking at this lineup very differently.
I think you're right. It does depend on how some of these guys pan out. I just like um for as good as some of these pieces are, I just it is a war of attrition to get through the season, and uh while I think he's going to find those guys, I do think it's worth mentioning that hey, like you got to prepare for this. He's like 3 or 4 injuries away from all of a sudden being like, well, where's the depth? So
Yeah, well, we're all that way.
Well, I agree. I'm just when you're looking at repeating for a championship, right? That's amplified as opposed to, hey, I'm a rebuilding team. If three or four of these guys get injured, yeah, it sucks. But like as long as I'm seeing some progression overall from the team, I'm happy, right? Uh,
Mm,
but
fair enough.
yeah.
All right, are we ready for week one?
Yeah, let's pick these week one matchups.
Pick them. Yeah, matchup to watch if we want to throw one out there.
God,
Um,
I
ye-
don't even admittedly know who's playing each other week well. Let me look at this quick.
I think my matchup with Andrew could be a good one. Andrew's coming off of a surprise semis appearance. I'm coming off a surprise round one exit. These are both top five teams by our power rankings. The only top five matchup by our power rankings. So I think that's a good one. But with a shout out to Yuki v Alex, because I think this is a very evenly matched matchup, and I think it's always funky when these two teams play each other.
Yeah, also shout out to Eric v. Ruthvik, which I think is basically the same as your matchup with Andrew, but like yeah, I mean team that lost in the semis versus team that lost in the first round.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, all right. Yeah, let's pick them.
Yeah, let me try one more time to get this to and it loaded this time. Okay, so I'll put it in. All right. You as a reminder to the viewers, won last year's pick'em, which means you should get to pick first again. I think that's only right.
All
Uh,
right. I think so. Yeah, I was the winner last year, and then we'll kind of in the future go off of who is currently leading in the season standings. Yeah, so let's pick these short weeks. Short weeks, a lot more potential for some fuckery. Um,
fuckery. Yeah.
um, I think I think Eric will beat Ruthvik. I think EBO will beat Connor. I think Jake will beat the Drury. I think you will beat Anthony. And then the last two are kind of tough. I think, I said that weird things happen in Alex versus Yuki. I will pick Yuki though, because I guess Yuki winning is always kind of funky. But I also think I like this team a little better. Um, and I haven't picked a tie yet. But maybe it's a new year. Maybe I don't have to pick a tie every time. I'll pick myself to beat Andrew.
All right. I will pick myself to beat Anthony. I think having the top Dodgers hitters and entities is going to give me a nice advantage kind of going into the main part of the week. Um, I'll pick EBO over Connor. I'll pick Jake over Daniel and Matt. I will pick Eric over Ruthvik. I'm gonna pick Alex over Yuki, and my reasoning for that is I don't know where the pitching comes from Yuki. Because while he's gonna get Zach Eflin, for the start of the week, like a lot of the starting pitchers that he does have are like not pitching in a start of team's rotations. Like Tyler Wells is not going to start that opening week, for example. So I don't know how many starts he's going to get. Whereas like Alex, like I get you have some concerns about his hitting, but like Logan Gilbert's going to get a start that week, and Bobby Miller, and I think Ryan Pepio is going to get a start, and Gavin Williams. So Brian, maybe not Brian Wu, but so I think there's going to be more opportunities for him there. And I will pick a tie, you and Andrew.
All right, you're picking a tie and I am not.
I wonder when the last time that happened was.
Good
Uh,
question.
maybe not.
I'm not gonna look it up right now. But
Uh,
yeah.
we won a couple week stretch last year where neither of us picked a tie. Oh, okay. I picked two ties week 11 last year. You did not pick a tie. Let's see if that happened any later. There are a couple times throughout the season. You started the season picking a bunch of ties and then just like stopped picking ties.
Yeah, I think I maybe got tired of ties or tried to switch it up last year, instead of
I
picking ties all the time. Um, but yeah, those are our picks, and that is week one. Yeah, we will be back. maybe because with it being a long week, we may or may not be back with an interstitial episode, depending on how we're doing and what happens in the league. But yeah, if we do not hear from you before then, have a great week one, and we will talk to you in uh, our first recap of season 7 and season 4 of the podcast.
Yeah, I'm excited. Before we go, one question for you since you didn't ask it in our preseason predictions. How many catchers does Yuki use this year?
Oh, a very good question, and one I should have been preparing for
Yeah, I tease it a
uh,
bit.
since you teased it. Let's think through this. You've asked it each of the last 2 years. Last year, you set the over at 6.5, and he
I think he hit
used
the over.
no, he hit the under. He only used 5 last year.
What? No way. That's
Yeah. And this year, um, yeah, the year before that, you set the over under at 6.5, and he used 8 in
yeah.
2022. Only 5 last year. Um, I'm gonna guess 6. He'll use one more than last year.
I think he'll use 7. He already has 3 in his roster. If Ethan Salas makes it to the majors, that's going to be 4, and he's going to find a way to get 3 more on this roster.
All right. Always a very good question to end with. Um, yeah, last year, yeah, we did over under pick'ems the last couple of years. I guess we didn't decide not to do that this year. Maybe we can do a rapid fire if we do an interstitial episode.
Yeah,
Um, but
that's what I was thinking. Either that or the playoff prediction, or not the playoff predictions. The preseason predictions kind of replaces that. I think one or the other.
yeah, we'll see about that. Yeah, we kind of asked and answered a lot of the same questions last year. Um, yeah, so we'll see about that. But yeah, either way, always a great time. And excited for yet another season of the league.
Yep, nope. Always excited. We'll see you soon.
And now you're walking through the door, just like 2024. Said I gotta believe, someday you'll see, someday you see that there's something more, yeah, there's something more. That's why you're so
This podcast is good.